Her father slammed his fist on the dinner table and shouted, "Get out of my house!" No one said a word, not her brother, not even her mother. They didn't know the woman they just humiliated was worth $79 million and she was done funding their lives. This is the true story of Harper Quinn. Would you have walked away or burned it all down? Tell us in the comments, what would you do? Everyone at the Quinn house was smiling except me. I brought pumpkin pie, but what they really wanted was my silence. The wreath on the door was festive enough. Orange leaves, pine cones, a ribbon that read, "Grateful, thankful, blessed." It might as well have said, "Harper, play nice." Inside the house smelled like cinnamon turkey and something artificially cheerful. My boots clicked on the hardwood floors, but no one turned their heads right away. Derek spotted me first. "Oh, look who made it," he said, setting his champagne glass down with the theatrical grace of a man who thought he deserved applause. I thought the CEO of Nothing Inc. might be too busy. Freelancing. Laughter bubbled around the room. My mother chuckled an anxious, paper-thin sound. My father didn't even glance up from carving the turkey. "Hi to you too, Derek," I said, holding the pie a little higher. Still working 70 hours a week to impress the ghost of capitalism. That earned a brief silence. Then a cousin coughed. Someone cleared their throat. Derek waved me off with a smile like I'd said something quaint. "I hope you made that from scratch." My father finally said, still not looking up. "Store-bought is for people with no discipline. Or pride." I set the pie down on the counter, choosing not to engage. Every year I told myself maybe this time will be different. This time I already knew it wouldn't. The table was already full, beautifully arranged place cards, mismatched heirloom china silver that had been polished within an inch of its life. Mine, as always, was missing. After a few awkward seconds, my mother emerged with a folding chair and a child-sized plate shaped like a turkey. "We didn't know if you were coming, honey," she said, placing the chair at the end of the table just slightly detached like I'd arrived too late for relevance. "You've been so busy." I nodded, lips pressed into a smile. No point stating the obvious. They never asked what I was busy with. Dinner began with Derek's retelling of his recent promotion. He'd made vice president of his bank's regional division, and every time he said the word strategic, an aunt nodded like he'd quoted scripture. Meanwhile, I served myself mashed potatoes in silence. No one asked about my work, or my daughter, or the life I'd built 200 miles away. After dessert, I tried. "She's learning to read," I said, slipping the sentence in between Derek's detailed account of his golf handicap. "Addie. She's 4. She started reading signs in the car last week." A pause. Someone shifted in their seat. My father looked up only for a second. "Probably takes after her dad." "Not you." I stared at him. Stillness isn't the absence of feeling. It's a cage where everything swells behind the bars. I felt the sting behind my eyes, the heat in my chest, but I didn't blink. I smiled instead. "That's possible," I said quietly. No one corrected him. No one even looked uncomfortable. My mother took a sip of wine. Derek resumed his story. I pushed a piece of pie around my plate, nodding like I was listening. But I wasn't. I was studying. The way Derek couldn't stop checking his watch. The way my father relished control. The way my mother avoided eye contact when the conversation turned sharp. I took it all in like data, like code waiting to be debugged. They didn't want to hear about my daughter. They didn't want to hear about the company I'd sold for 8 figures, the startups I'd backed, the empire I'd built in quiet. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the girl who once failed chemistry, who married too young, who came back broken and didn't complain. I gave them that girl for one more evening. Then my wrist buzzed. Blueverse Holdings, $137 today. I slid my napkin over the screen, covered the smirk that rose on instinct. Fork to mouth, face impassive. Let them think I was tasting regret. Let them believe I still needed their approval. Tomorrow they would remember this dinner as ordinary. But I was already writing the ending. "You want to speak like you've accomplished something," my father bellowed. "You single mother, no husband, no worth, you think you belong at this table." The room froze. Forks paused midair. Glasses hovered just short of lips. The chandelier above flickered ever so slightly, catching the sweat on my father's temple. Every eye at the table was either glued to me or desperately looking away. Last time he raised his voice at me, I was 19. I had packed a duffel bag and cried in the driveway. This time I didn't flinch. I'd waited 14 years for this moment. I sat very still. The back of my neck felt warm, but my hands were steady. My pie sat untouched, the crust slightly cracked from the tension in the room. I looked at my father and gave him nothing. No shock, no retort, no apology. He hated that more than any outburst I could have delivered. Well, he snapped, pressing both palms flat on the table, standing now. Say something. Prove me wrong. Go on, impress us. I slowly folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. Derek, ever the diplomat when it served him, stared pointedly at his phone. I don't need to prove anything to you. I said, my voice even. I came for dinner. I stayed quiet. That was your preference. You think you're above this family? He spat. You think your little projects make you someone. They make me independent, I said. Something you never respected. That was when he slammed the table. The sound jolted the youngest cousin, who gasped and covered her mouth. The wine in someone's glass rippled like an earthquake had just hit the room. Get out of my house. He growled, his voice low and thick. Now. I stood. Not fast. Not with drama. Just calmly, like a woman who'd been dismissed from worse places than a dining room with floral curtains and an oversized turkey centerpiece. No one moved. No one said a word. Not even my mother, who looked like she wanted to cry but couldn't find permission. I reached for my coat hanging by the staircase. The murmur of conversation behind me didn't resume. No one offered a parting word. They watched me like a live feed, like the show wasn't over just yet. At the door, I paused. Not to plead, not to explain, just to leave the last word on my own terms. Happy Thanksgiving, I said, my voice flat as ice. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even close it loudly. I let it click behind me with the same restraint I'd used all evening. Outside, the night air felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in that house. I walked to my car, a black electric sedan that Derek had once mistaken for a rental when I'd parked 2 blocks away at last year's gathering. I got in, pressed the start button, and let the silence wrap around me like a familiar coat. My phone buzzed. Blueverse Holdings portfolio update. Total net worth $79, $382 or $600. I read it twice, not because I needed confirmation, but because it tasted different tonight. I whispered, they have no idea. And I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. They thought I was the burden. The truth, I was the bankroll. The elevator doors slid open into my penthouse, and silence greeted me like an old friend. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Austin skyline, glittering like spilled diamonds. I stepped out of my heels, peeled off my coat, and let the city hum fill the air. I walked straight to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, then headed to the desk near the window where my laptop waited, charged open, glowing like a silent invitation. I sat down, pulled my hair back into a loose knot, and cracked my knuckles. Every check signed anonymous. Every wire transfer unacknowledged. Tonight, I write the final entry in their ledger. First tab, Quinn Family Mortgage. I logged into the private account linked to their monthly payments. Autopay had been set up years ago, back when they thought Derek's bonus checks were covering the roof over their heads. Click. Autopay canceled. Second tab, Charles's Lexus lease. Registered under his name, but co-signed with my business credit. They never asked how a retired engineer afforded luxury. They just assumed he earned it. Click. Lease terminated. Third tab, Derek's kids' college fund. I'd set up 2 529 plans in their names anonymously, of course. He always loved bragging about smart financial planning. Click. Funds liquidated. Redirected to Harper Quinn Holdings. I didn't smile. Not out of sadness. Just focus. Next, the trust fund. A quiet retirement account I'd structured 5 years ago, intended to provide monthly stipends for both my parents. I had looped in a lawyer, created protections, but nothing I couldn't unravel. Subject trust revocation request. Please proceed with immediate dissolution of access for Charles and Margaret Quinn. Effective tonight. I hit send. The screen darkened for a moment before updating. The digital signature blinked once, then cleared. The money was still there, just no longer theirs. I sipped water, exhaled, and pulled up the next file. My mother's credit card. I'd added her as an authorized user long ago, quietly absorbing her grocery bills and impulse spending. I paused for just a second, then moved the cursor. Freeze card. Done. The final move was personal. I opened my encrypted message dashboard and selected Derek's contact. No emoji, no fluff, just data and fact. You always said I was the failure. Good luck proving it without my money. I clicked send. Then I leaned back in my chair, let my eyes drift across the skyline, and let it all hit me, not the pain, not the anger, the clarity. I'd kept them afloat for nearly a decade, not for love, but for guilt. Some desperate hope that if I gave enough, they'd look at me like I mattered. Tonight, I stopped hoping. The phone buzzed on the desk. One new voicemail. From my mother. I hit play, not expecting much. Harper. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. The bank called. Your father is furious. What's happening? I didn't answer. Instead, I stood, walked to the wet bar near the bookshelf, and poured a glass of red wine. Some debts aren't owed anymore. Some ties aren't broken, they're cut precisely, finally clean. Freedom felt strange, like a room without noise for the first time in years. The cafe smelled like roasted espresso beans and fresh bread sunlight pouring through tall windows, dust catching like glitter in the beams. It was calm. Too calm, maybe, for someone who had spent the last few days dismantling an entire family's illusion. I stirred my coffee slowly. No emails. No missed calls I wanted to return. Just me, a half-eaten croissant, and the low murmur of a few laptops clicking around the room. They pushed me out, but I already had somewhere else to go. Across from me sat Lena Woods, her curls pinned up in a messy twist, laughter tucked into the corners of her eyes. She wore a faded navy sweatshirt, sleeves pushed to her elbows, and hands wrapped around a chipped mug like it was armor. I still can't believe it was you, she said, shaking her head. All these years, I thought it was some church donor. You sent me 30 grand, changed everything. I smiled faintly. I just saw someone who needed a runway. You didn't just give me a runway. You gave me clearance to take off. Back then, she was stuck in a 2-bedroom apartment with an infant, a broken lease, and a man who swung apologies like fists. I saw her profile on a private survivor fund and wired the money anonymously. Never expected to meet her again, especially like this. Lena set her mug down. So, I have an idea. It's still raw, but hear me out. I leaned in. Second start, she said. A foundation, not just grants. Real structured childcare partnerships, job upskilling, legal help for custody and housing cases. My breath caught for a second, not because I was surprised, but because it was right. The kind of right that settled in your chest like warmth instead of fire. I can offer $1. $5 million in seed money, I said, reaching for the small leather notebook beside me. It's clean capital from Harper Quinn Ventures. But Lena shook her head, not in dismissal, but defiance. You've done enough alone, she said. I'll match it not in cash, but with our community. Connections, press. We'll build it together. My fingers paused mid-note. Together, I echoed, and the word tasted unfamiliar. She nodded. You saved me when I was invisible. Now let's make sure no one else gets overlooked again. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I looked around the young father bouncing his baby by the window, the older couple reading the same newspaper together. Just life. Uncomplicated. Unaware of the storm I had walked through to reach this calm. Then my phone vibrated. A headline flashed across the lock screen. Quinn family faces lawsuit over unpaid loans. Bank investigates large missing transfers. I clicked it open. No photo of me. No name. Just Derek's smirk beside a paragraph about financial mismanagement and mysterious donor withdrawal. I closed the screen and turned it face down. They're not doing well, huh? Lena asked gently. They're doing exactly what they earned. I replied. The calm didn't waver, but my voice had sharp edges now. She studied me. You ever gonna tell them what you've built, what they lost? I looked out the window past the trees and the sidewalks and the quiet miracle of not being needed. They don't deserve to know. First came the calls, then the threats, now the apologies. It had been exactly 1 week since Thanksgiving, 168 hours since my last words to my family, spoken calmly through a laptop screen that had closed behind them like a silent verdict. The penthouse office looked out over Austin's skyline chrome towers shimmering as dusk settled. My desk remained immaculate, a single monitor, a closed ledger, and a glass of cold tea that had lost its warmth hours ago. They only remember my name when their bank does. I accepted the Zoom invite with one click. The screen flickered, and there they were. Charles in his study, framed by wood paneling and aging trophies. Derek in a dim room, eyes slightly glassy. My mother framed softly between floral wallpaper and an open window behind her that hinted at the quiet Texas night. Harper? My father began, voice tight. We need to talk. We don't know what happened. The payments stopped. They're threatening foreclosure. I nodded, making no move to unmute until they had finished. The lag droned around Charles's stuttered explanations and Derek's drop-tone guilt staining his face. My mother sniffled, dabbing at her eyes. When the second pause settled, I spoke. I'll show you. I tapped a key and the screen split. One side showed my face, the other loaded a clean spreadsheet with line items. Quinn family mortgage. Total paid $512,000, Charles Quinn, vehicle lease. Paid in full. Derek Quinn, MBA tuition. September 2020, $120,000, Margaret Quinn, household expenses via card. $45,000. This, I said, pressing space to scroll, is every dollar that kept your household afloat. Not charity, investment. Until I chose it wasn't worth it anymore. Derek's mouth twitched. You did all that. Without telling us, I maintained calm. You all were comfortable enough not to ask. Charles swallowed. Mom's lips quivered. Forgiveness isn't automatic, I continued. But understanding is earned. My tone was crisp, a courtroom statement. If we're going to salvage anything of those relationships, we need terms. I laid them out, no more assumptions, no more anonymity, no more expectations. I asked them to sign legal documents relinquishing claims to future assets under Harper Quinn Holdings. No more secret cosigns. No more managed accounts. Silence followed. Then Charles cleared his throat. We were wrong, he said, gravel heavy in his voice. I apologize, Harper. Derek nodded more to himself than to me. Okay, I said. That's a start. I closed the spreadsheet and leaned back. Charles's tone shifted as he tried one last tactic, guilt, emotional leverage, but I let the silence fill the space. When he started raising his voice, I pressed a button. The screen went dark with a click and his words cut off in mid-yell, swallowed by the quiet confidence of my own decision. Goodbye, Dad. I removed my headphones, sipping the tea that now tasted like relief. A new email notification popped up before I expected it. Subject: we'd like to nominate you for the Silent Legacy Award. For anonymous philanthropy. I stared at the sender, at the subject line, at the quiet validation typed in digital ink. I felt conflicted. The stage wasn't for me. I built it so others could stand tall. The community center hummed with warmth and movement. Streamers in deep plum and silver floated above heads, caught in the gentle gusts of the central air vents. Folding chairs had been replaced with polished rows, a podium positioned beneath a modest arch of flowers. Everything was simple, intentional, designed for those who had never had a stage of their own. I stood near the curtain's edge, my hand wrapped gently around my daughter's. Her small fingers squeezed mine with quiet certainty. She looked up at me, eyes wide and curious, not fully understanding what we were about to witness, but sensing somehow its importance. My father once said, "You'll never be a legacy." Funny, that's all I am now. Lena stood at the podium. Her voice didn't need amplification. It carried naturally, the kind that could fold people into stillness without force. This foundation began not with a boardroom or a balance sheet, she said, but with a question. What if single mothers weren't alone? There was no mention of me, no spotlight, just the right people being seen, and that more than anything was the design. She gave me the chance to start over, Lena said. And today we pass that forward to every woman who's been told she's too late, too broken, too small. Applause thundered. I didn't move. A reporter spotted me near the back. Excuse me, are you Harper Quinn? I turned, politely offered a soft smile. I'm just here as a supporter. No statement. We've heard rumors about. I shook my head. The story isn't mine to tell. Not today. She backed off. Not everyone fights for headlines. I glanced at my daughter. She had let go of my hand and was adjusting the bow in her hair, peering at the ribbon stretched across a newly renovated hallway. There behind that ribbon waited the first set of transitional apartments, clean, secure, hopeful. The check had cleared that morning, another $1 million from a trust labeled simply, for the unseen. My phone buzzed. Mom, I'm proud of you, even if I can't say it out loud. I stared at it for a moment. No reply. Just acknowledgement. It was enough. Ready? I asked my daughter. She nodded. I guided her toward the ribbon. A volunteer handed her the oversized scissors. Cameras stayed back, no flash, no frenzy. Just a child with shiny blades about to make something new. You get to cut the future open, I whispered. She beamed and made the snip. Applause rippled again, louder now. Lena gestured to invite everyone forward. I stepped back. My phone buzzed once more. A new message. Investor proposal. A new project. You interested? I looked out over the crowd. Mothers hugging. Children darting between chairs. No one looking at me. That was the point. I smiled. Maybe. For years, she was dismissed, diminished, and silenced until the silence became her sharpest weapon. Without raising her voice, she dismantled the legacy that once tried to erase her and rebuilt one no one could ignore. Justice didn't arrive with fanfare, but with quiet precision, cutting deeper than any public spectacle. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. And sometimes the strongest vengeance is simply never needing to explain yourself again.